The controversial Finance Bill 2024 sparked widespread anger among Kenyans, leading to protests dominated by the Gen Z. They demonstrated across the country chanting "Reject, not amend," voicing their opposition to the bill. Many were arrested, abducted, and kidnapped by the police for their outspoken criticism. Faith Odhiambo, the president of the Law Society of Kenya, emerged as a key advocate for those oppressed. She quickly took on the role of representing Kenyans who were arrested illegally by the police, becoming a hero to many. I met her at her office in Nairobi, where she expressed her security concerns amidst her advocacy efforts. As we start this conversation, some Gen Zs are planning to go to the streets again. When you saw this happen for the first time, what came to your mind?
You know, I saw them coming out on the streets and I said, how can we help? In terms of, because I understood their cause and their plight. I've been involved in the finance bill. We tabled our memorandum to the Budget and Finance Committee, where we had gone to Parliament to give our representations. We are even part of our team with KEPSA that gave our representations to the head of state. And so I understood quite a bit of, how heavy this finance bill was going to be. And, I'd seen the complaints online, but I didn't think it will come to the magnitude that people will actually go out to the streets. So when they did, I thought that, how can I help? The only way I can help is with our profession, is to call our colleagues. Yeah.
Was it tedious, the whole process in the beginning?
It was. In fact, I think that's the day I got my first tear gas dose, because they were trying to chase us out of Central Police Station that refused to let advocates see the people who had been arrested. So when I went there and people were really agitated and angry, they tried to call the OCS. The OCS had refused to come, and the indications it was more of a cat and mouse game. So when I got there, and the crowd was even more rallied up, and I was speaking to one of the deputies at his office, just trying to explain to him that, constitutionally you can't hold someone for protesting. It's their right to picket. As long as they have not destroyed any public property, they have not harmed anyone. They are just armed with their bottles of water, singing, and with some with vuvuzelas, some with, shouting, and their chants and their radios on the street. There's nothing wrong that they have actually done. So if you have to arrest them and charge them for an offense known in the law. And at the end of the day, most of them were all released, which we were happy. So the first day, except what was painful and I find quite unnecessary, was the killing of Rex. Yeah.
And a lot of Kenyans see you as a voice for the voiceless. Take us through your resolve to actually give a voice to these people who are voiceless.
Particularly this time, I felt like the biggest contribution that the legal profession can give with regards to all those who are on the streets was to offer our legal service. So for me, it came like a normal duty that we were just ensuring we did. And I'm happy I reached out to some of our branches around the country, asking the branch chairs to also respond and ensure that people who are arrested, they're able to defend them. Those who are charged in court, let them have representation. And the uptake was quite good. People were happy and excited to just come in and support members of the public. And I think what has kept me going sometimes, even with the fatigue, is just the goodwill messages and the messages of prayers, that they are with me in prayer. And they know it's difficult, but they know that the Lord will light the way for us through whatever challenges we get.
Okay.
Yeah.
And for the past few weeks, the Gen Z protest has taken a life of its own. Did it catch you as a surprise?
It did catch me as a surprise. The unfortunate thing is Kenyans mostly just complain. They just complain and they don't take it into their hands in terms of how can they make a difference. As a law society, we always try to make a difference. We go to parliament, we give representation, we challenge these laws all the time. We go to court, and sometimes, unfortunately, we're labeled anti-government, but it's not anti-government, it's rule of law. The reality is no government will stay in the strict and narrow, and particularly at the history of this country. But we have tried to always uphold the rule of law, fight for our Bill of Rights, and ensure justice independently of the judiciary. We saw those who are busy complaining on Twitter breathe life and come to the streets. So it took me by surprise because I didn't expect it to happen. And the Gen Zs have caused an intergenerational shift that they have called out. Millennials have joined them, the Generation X, and even the older ones who have been quiet for quite a while have also said they'll join in the struggle.
Yeah. And a lot of Kenyans, especially those who participated in the protests previously, actually living in fear because of the state-sponsored abduction or disappearance. Are you concerned as the LSK?
We are highly concerned as the Law Society of Kenya. We tabled about 10 names of disappearances that were still existing. And the thing that I find callous is those on Twitter and government bloggers who try to rubbish and say that that's not true, this person was arrested. Like Paul Mwangi, I raised hue and cry that he was picked up at 5:30 after his family reached out. And he was later released around midday. And he had a cut on his head. He was thrown somewhere. He said he was beaten thoroughly. In fact, he was taken to hospital and went home. And I think it's one of his family members that was speaking on his behalf. So if it was an arrest, then you're telling us government is arresting and torturing people. Because what we are seeing more and more is people are being picked up now and being tortured. Before it was more of a psychological torture. Now we are seeing instances of physical torture. People saying that, and others that were spoken to directly saying they were beaten up as they were being asked questions. Some saying their private parts were pressed, things that we only had during the Moi days. And as the Law Society, we are saying there is no room for such things to happen in this nation. We have a new constitution. We don't have the Moi constitution anymore. And in this constitution, we have a vast Bill of Rights that cannot be limited. And in that end, we will ensure that we represent those victims. Some I know are still scared to come out, but once they do, we will petition and have these agencies held accountable, and we'll try and ensure that they get compensation for the suffering that they have gone through. I'm also concerned about even from the abductions and the torture. We also have extrajudicial killings. It's sad to hear the head of state saying there are no extrajudicial killings. The killings in parliament were extrajudicial killings. You cannot have a policing body that's supposed to investigate, arrest, and produce in court, investigating, giving a judgment and executing you, because that was what happened. Those young Gen Zs were executed. Some were just carrying bottles of water. You remember even there are videos going around. Some were just dancing on the streets with their bottle next to parliament. The next thing, they have been shot, they are bleeding out and dying. And so those are extrajudicial killings, unless the kind of version of extrajudicial killings that this country thinks and what is actually happening. And that's why we're even calling out the international community, because it's plain to see what is happening. These are extrajudicial killings, and you're allowing, if you're saying you stand for human rights, stand for human rights. If you're not, just say you don't care, you're here for trade, and then don't meddle into Kenyan's politics at all. Because when you come out strongly supporting what the government of the day is saying, and then when killings start happening, your mom, or you're trying to be politically correct, then you're speaking from two mouths. And so I'm greatly concerned with abductions, because for me it's a chilling effect of a history that we left behind. Today, Nyayo torture chambers is a monument that is there to remind the sufferings. I hope we are not going to have a new chambers that will be saying 20 years from now we are setting up another monument for where young teenagers, young youth, young Gen Zs were tortured and killed. You see, to see even children who have coming out and saying no, we are fighting for, it's not a different situation of saying that I want the opportunity to also, it's our turn to eat. This is a different kind of revolution where people are saying it's time to change the country for the betterment of everyone. And that is, for me, a huge turning point, because most people are fighting for power to come and say it's our turn to eat. You've eaten a lot, also as we want to come and eat. You know, it brings some level of patriotism. And I say some of them really inspire me, because someone to say I'm ready to die for my country, I'm ready to die for change, I'm ready to live in the history books as someone who gave their life for others. Those are the true heroes. Those are the true legends.
Madam President of the LSK, is there justice for the victim of abduction?
The challenge we've had with some of the victims of abduction is that they're not willing to come forward. I think it's only 2 who have since done their story, because of mostly a lot of fear and intimidation. But we are willing and we are working on a petition to ensure that we deal with this question of abductions in the court to give reprieve and declaration. But more so, once some of the victims can come out, we can even seek compensation for abduction. Because as long as no one comes out, then you don't have someone to support your petition to say, yes, they went through this ordeal, this is what happened, I am one of them, I've survived, and I can count, I can stand out and be counted and stand to protect the ones that are yet to be picked up. Yeah.
And 2 days ago, the president spoke to Kenyans and noted that the abductions were not state-sponsored. What's your opinion of that?
I'll adopt the opinion that most Kenyans are thinking. Most Kenyans, I think Latif asked the question of when Kenyans asking, when will you stop lying? These questions, most of the people who have been abducted are being questioned on issues affecting the Mandamano. So unless there's a international, he's telling us there's an international body picking up people and interrogating them and interrogating their friends and threatening their families, they'll come for them. There's no other body than the police that we have here in our country and the different agencies as well. So to deny, and yet people have been picked up from their homes at wee hours of the morning and they have harrowing experiences of being tortured. I think as the father of the nation, instead of denying and blocking, he needs to account and say he will investigate. He needs to account and say he will hold those responsible to book. He needs to account and say we will compensate. Yeah.
Yourself, do you have safety concerns in light of what is happening?
I do have safety concerns. We've had incidences, especially on the 25th. We had incidences, and also have been stalked around for a while. And we've been stalked. In fact, 25th were armed people who were after us. And one of our officers, who mans the toll-free line, someone tried to break into a house, and we just thank God that the OCS picked up his phone at 3 a.m. in the morning, and he was able to send a team that arrived there quickly, and the perpetrators disappeared. And she's now in a safe house. But also some of my council members have had to go into hiding as well at some point. So we still have safety concerns as well. I think people will say that when you're in trouble, call faith. But yeah, so it's just courage. It's just my fear well prayed for, because yes, I have the concerns. You know, sometimes you sleep and you're like, who will they try and attack next? Will they get me here? Will they get me there? But what can you do? This is my country, this is my home.
And looking forward, what do you think needs to be done for the state agencies to follow the law?
I think the head of state must hold accountable command responsibility. We must hold the IG accountable, the head of Nairobi region, he must be held accountable. The officers that were leading some of these battalions must be held accountable. The shooters that were identified, even those who aren't, can be identified by ballistics, and I hope we can get an independent body, from an international independent body, to also offer ballistic services so that we ascertain they don't hide, because you can tell from the bullets who owns what, because the same police who are perpetrators cannot investigate themselves with regards to the bullet wounds and the getting the casings out. Will never be able to know the truth because they will cover for each other. He needs to ensure that those are held to account. You know, Rex's mother was saying how she wants justice. That's all she wants. She's had to painfully bury her son.
Yeah.
And she wants justice. And the president needs to listen. Because we have been brought to this moment because he wasn't listening. He was waiting to respond. He needs to listen to what the Genzs are saying. Not to respond, but to understand, to empathize, and to act on their demands, because without justice there cannot be reconciliation and there will be no peace. And so to bring back the nation as a whole, he needs to ensure he holds relevant persons accountable to stop the corruption, take measures to stop the corruption that is ongoing, and also ensure that everyone is brought to book. That is when people will feel that he's genuine. That is when people will change from the stance that he's lying to a stance that the president is now actually listening to us.
And a lot of Kenyans are praising you online. You have become a hero to so many. Are you aware of that actually?
I've seen comments online. What I can say is I've learned that this praise and fame is fleeting. I take it more of a responsibility, because now it gives me more pressure, because I feel like a lot of people are relying on me.
Definitely.
So it's more pressure for me. I take it as I have more responsibilities and I have to try and ensure that I am held accountable and I'm able to at least ensure that I protect as many as I possibly can.